Greetings, listeners, and welcome to the third episode of Surviving Satchidananda, the Dark Secrets of an International Yoga Movement, hosted by yours truly, Brianna Patton. When I was living at Yogaville, someone told me, "We plan, God laughs." And that's kind of what's been happening here with this podcast. I had a whole idea of where I wanted to take this thing, a narrative structure, the story I wanted to tell, but that's not what it's been coming out to be. As I've been having conversations with people who have lived at Yogaville for much longer than me, and I've been learning new information, it really seems like a new story has just taken over. We are going to shift gears a little bit, and for the next few episodes, I want to focus on people who grew up in Yogaville. Yogaville was founded in the early 80s, and kids have been growing up there ever since. So for today's episode, we are in conversation with Chai. Chai has lived in Yogaville all his life, and I remember when he was just a wee little lad, and he would help cut vegetables in the kitchen and hang out in the cafe and come to game nights and things like that. It's one of the things I really appreciated about Yogaville was the intergenerational community building that happened. I remember specifically one moment I was playing a board game with someone who was in their 60s, someone who was in their 80s, and a kid who was a young teenager. And I just thought, wow, this is beautiful. None of us are related to each other, but we're in community together and we're spending time with each other and getting to know our neighbors. So Chai has the inside scoop since he's been there ever since he was born. He just moved out a couple years ago, so he's going to be telling us all about that journey, the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing up at Yogaville. And I want to say the subject matter we are talking about is extremely serious, but just the friendship that Chai and I have, and my knee-jerk reaction usually when I hear uncomfortable information or things that make me upset is to laugh or make a joke about it. And when I was editing this back, I was like, damn, he's kind of telling me some really heavy stuff, and I'm laughing about it. And you guys can't see our faces and the interactions we're having, so I just wanted to let you know I'm not making fun of Chai, and it's a very heavy conversation about child abuse and neglect and other things that are uncomfortable, but the tone of the conversation you'll hear is a little bit lighthearted. So after the conversation, when we debrief, I will bring it back to how extremely serious these topics are and give you an update on the direction of this podcast. So without further ado, here is me and Chai. Thanks for coming to talk to me, Chai.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I feel truly blessed to be here today.
What does your name mean?
Well, my full name is Chaitanya. And as far as I know, it means consciousness. But, yeah.
So were you born at Yogaville?
Well, technically, I was born at UVA.
Okay.
But, yeah, I mean, came here and went back. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So you grew up there your entire life?
Yes.
What's that like?
It was pretty chill, actually. Like, I had all that room to explore the woods and stuff. And, I only had the one parent, which we can get into. But,
well, you can talk more about your parents.
Yeah, basically, so my dad, he came there in like 96. So when he came to Yogaville, he was 45 maybe. And my mom came to Yogaville my age or a couple of years younger.
How old are you?
Right now I'm 22. When I was born, she was 22. They got married, allegedly. Or whatever. They did like the vow of intent. I don't know. I've never seen any documents. But they did like the vow of intent, I guess, because they had to or whatever.
Wait, explain what the vow of intent is.
Yeah, so the vow of intent, there's people who date at Yogaville or whatever, and people catch wind of it. And if you live on the ashram property or they support you somehow, then you have to, I don't know if you sign something or what it is, but you have to basically say, yeah, we're going to get married if you live together. They won't let you live together unless you vow you're gonna get married. It's like, kind of weird, like a shotgun.
Like an engagement contract.
Yeah.
I thought it was like you have to get married within a year or something.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, that's probably it.
But do you know what happens if you don't? You don't want to
know. Bad
things.
I don't know. They never told me. But one thing I did learn, she left because after I was born, she has a lot of trauma. And after I was born, she had apparently a lot of depression. So she left probably when I was like around 6 to 9 months of age. I guess their relationship was not that great after a while, so she just kind of gave up and split. So I never really had any memories of her per se before, like at all growing up. But recently, like 2 or 3 years ago, I found her.
What was that like, seeing her?
It was weird. I had the mask on because it was COVID, and when I walked up to her, she thought I was some dude trying to hit on her at first, which is so weird. But then I was like, "Oh, I'm your son," and I was like, here, like I pulled the mask down, and I was like, "Oh, now you see," because I look just like her. So yeah, it was this whole thing, and we were all good for a while, and we had a good time getting to know each other. But then she has this sort of an inability to have a close relationship with almost anybody, it seems like. So that kind of fell apart, and then it's sort of been like an off and on thing. Like once in a while we'll like talk to each other, but then it just kind of like goes back to the same thing where she can't really handle it. Or
That sounds hard.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. She's a good person. She's just has her stuff, and that precludes her from being able to form that bond, I guess. I mean, she can do it, but it's not like she can sustain it. But one thing I did learn is that apparently, I was told this by my mom, they as in the people who were like the leadership at Yogaville, or maybe not quite the leadership, but like the people who, it was some of those people who like say stuff.
People that have clout.
Yeah, the clout. the clout havers.
You can tell.
That's what it is. That's what I'm getting at. Well, they thought that it wasn't a good idea to have like visitations, because their philosophy, I suppose, was that it's better not to be there at all than to be like than to be like coming in and out on the weekends or whatever.
I'm sorry. I'm so.
Isn't that strange?
They just figure out new ways to fuck up people's
lives.
That's
what I'm saying.
Why are we?
And that's what I'm. Well, see, that's what I'm saying.
Why?
It's like I only learned about this 2 years after I turned 18 or whatever, and I'm like, huh.
Your mom's telling you this?
Yeah,
when
she said. My dad, he confirmed that. He said he has had the same opinion. I don't know if they like convinced him of that or what, but I guess they just really thought that it would be more harm than good. Which honestly, who knows? Maybe they're right. Apparently she's grown a lot, as my dad said, because they were kind of talking to each other a little bit when I first re-encountered her, but that didn't last either. But
I mean, that's interesting. I'm trying to put a timeline together. So you were born not long after Swami Satchidananda died?
I was born in April of 2002, and as far as I know, he died in like September of 2002.
Okay.
So I actually have a little picture of him holding me.
Oh, wow.
He didn't even look that excited about it. It was kind of weird. Like, oh, another one of these babies. But,
So then you would have been 9 months old, so he would have been dead for a few months. So it would have been this new leadership change, because before he died, he had like complete rule over the place. And I think kind of what he said, from what I understand, I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, I bet. Yeah, that makes sense.
But then it would have been this newer leadership that's coming in that are intermingling with people's family dynamics.
Yeah. Once they can like tell you what to do in terms of like the whole getting married thing, they can kind of like tell you what to do about everything else, I guess, or whatever. But in general, I think that growing up there, and regardless of what I was saying earlier, I was going to say I didn't really have much of a social life because there wasn't really anybody my age there, and it's out in the middle of nowhere, so it's not like I can just go across the street and hang out with somebody. Or I mean, I could, but it was like people that were like 10 or 15 or 20 years older than me. Which is another thing. I've always sort of struggled to relate to people my age. But as I got older, I started to learn about the things with the accusations or whatever with Satchidananda. And I was like, oh, I wouldn't even be surprised, honestly.
How old were you when you heard that?
Probably, I think that was around the time when Shanti Norris started talking about her stuff, or like restarted talking about it.
Yeah, like 2022, I believe.
Yeah. So even before that, a couple years before that, I was on Reddit, and I just like randomly looked up Yogaville, and I found that thing about Sundaram. you know?
Yes.
The young lady.
Catherine
Yeah.
Chang.
Yeah. And I was like...
So for people that don't know, do you want to tell the story?
I don't know that much about it. You probably know more than me.
From what I understand, there was a woman named Catherine Chang, I believe, and she came to do the light program, the month-long immersion, and she was, I think, a student at a really good university, and then after 3 weeks, she decides she's going to marry one of the swamis at Yogaville. And from what I was told by the people at Yogaville... He
was a swami at that point?
He was a swami.
Oh.
And he,
I forgot that part.
took off his robes to marry, because you can't be married if you're a swami.
Okay, that's ringing a bell now, yeah.
But apparently from the people at Yogaville told me, everybody, including Swami Satchidananda, was not approving of this, and they tried to tell him to stop, but they just couldn't do anything about it. So
I bet.
Sundaram ended up marrying Catherine. And her family got really upset, understandably.
Yeah, they made that website.
They made a whole website, like, help find Catherine or bring Catherine home.
I think it was called Yogaville.com.
Yeah, there was a lawsuit.
Yeah, they were like, you can't have this domain name. This is not good.
Because it was Yogaville.org is the ashram's website, and then Yogaville.com, Catherine's parents bought and were like, they stole our daughter. And then so Sundaram was the lawyer at the time, I believe, too. So he filed, a lawyer on behalf of the ashram. Said that they can't do that, but the family was on like extra TV news, so it was a big Yogaville controversy. And then I don't know what happened to her. Do you know what happened to her? Because she wasn't around when we were around.
No, I don't know. I would guess that she eventually just like woke up from the brainwashing and was like, maybe this ain't it.
I really want to talk to her. Catherine, if you're out there.
Yeah, right.
Or Catherine's family.
Hit us up.
Yeah.
We're here. Yeah. For me, it was weird because the age gap between them was like the same as my parents, you know. But I guess it's like any relationship, they had a certain friction after a while.
And it seems like the ashram wasn't approving of their relationship, so that could have...
Honestly, I don't know if they did or not.
Well, if they told her not to see you, I
feel
like...
that was after she left. They thought that if she was just coming and going, that could like have some sort of negative effect on me. As if, why isn't she there all the time? You know, somehow that would be worse than not being there at all. Honestly, I kind of see the logic of it. I know it's kind of messed up, but I kind of see where
I see where they were trying to go, but just knowing what I know about a lot of the people at Yogaville, I would not trust any of them to know about the well-being of children. I mean, even on the Tiger King documentary about what these like little girls went through and what people have said about going to school there, I'm like, I don't...
Yeah, they don't have a leg to stand on or whatever the phrase is with that sort of thing. But I think really all it boils down to with all of this, really, at the end of the day, is the whole idea of God shines through this one man, and so therefore we must forever be accepting of everything that he may or may not do or whatever. It's very toxic, and I didn't even fully realize growing up that was like really what they believed, you know.
What is your perception of Swami Satchidananda growing up? What are people telling you about him?
Well, growing up, I called him Gurudev, right? Of course. So I just was like, I never knew that, but then I was like, oh, his name's actually Swami Satchidananda. So when I started to learn about all that stuff, I sort of moved away from calling him Gurudev, because that's like a title of honor, and you're like being put on a pedestal, basically, being called Gurudev.
What's your dad and everybody else at Yogaville telling you about this man who the place is named after?
Well, that's the funny thing, is they never really tried to indoctrinate me, per se. It was more of an implied thing of like, here's this big picture of this guy on the wall, and we go to the next room and there's another one, and every other room there's a little picture, at least a small one somewhere. And so it wasn't never like they never actually sat there and told me like, hey, this guy is like enlightened. It was just kind of in the vibe. It wasn't like overt, but you see, you know, like I said, with the pictures and everything. But when I went to their little private school, I was there from
the Vidyalaya?
Yeah, the Vidyalaya. I was there from kindergarten and first grade, and then I got kicked out because I had anger issues, and they got sick of dealing with me. So that kind of sucked. But I was out like I said, in second grade, I went to public school. So
what do you remember? What else do you remember about your time at the Vidyalaya?
I remember we did yoga, of course, And I remember we had a lot of different teachers. Even over that 2-year span that I was there, we had maybe like 5 different teachers or something, because they would kind of cycle through them. Like somebody would be able to do it, and then they couldn't do it anymore, and somebody else would come and do it. But allegedly, when I was a child at their
this is something that happened to you, right?
Yes.
So it's not.
Well, that's the thing. There's 2 things. One thing I do remember very clearly that I experienced that she did, this lady who was the teacher for however long, she would like grab me and like hold me very tightly and like almost like strangling. Like not like she would have me in a chokehold or something, but hold me so tight that I couldn't breathe, and it was like trying to like keep me from doing stuff or whatever, just for like a couple minutes to like stop me from having whatever energy I'm like jumping around or whatever as a kid. I don't know. But yeah, that I clearly remember that definitely happened. And one time I was like hiding from her under a table, and then this was like shortly before the end of the day when the parents came, and when my dad came, she accused me to him of giving her the middle finger. And I didn't even know what that was at that age. Like, I was like, well, what are you talking about? I didn't even know that was a thing. But she was like, yeah, he did that. And I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. It was possible I did, but I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't even know what it was. But another thing that allegedly happened that I actually don't recall myself, but I was told that she had, like, and this is, like, totally not something I remember, but something that, like, these other kids that were there supposedly swear by. She like tied me to a tree along it, as well as like 1 or 2 other kids. But I don't remember that actually myself. But they tell me that's what they tell me. Like maybe I was repressed or something. I don't know. But yeah, I think she did eventually get kicked out, banned or whatever. But then she came back a few years later, and she was like trying to be all nice to me or whatever at the lunch room. I was like, oh, hey, whatever. But I was like, this is weird. You need to leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, so.
So did you or any of the kids ever tell any other adults that she was?
I think somebody must have, because I know they said that she got kicked out at some point. So at some point it must have been come to the surface. But like I was going to say earlier, what I really think all of this really boils down to at the end of the day is a sort of optimistic naivete by the people at Yogaville. They have when they encountered this man first, they were all like basically drugged up hippies at Woodstock, and then here's this guy, he's like literally up on the pedestal, the grand guru from India. And so that, I guess that gets ingrained in somebody, somebody like that, to where they think this person can do no wrong, and so they sort of project that on other people as well. People who seem like you can sort of there's people there who kind of play it up, and make themselves seem
more
like,
spiritual.
like
having all these visions and meditation and
like I was saying earlier, they're like, I know what's up, and so if you can kind of put off a vibe like that, people will look the other way almost, or like give you the benefit of the doubt. This is just my opinion, but all this stuff that goes on there that's not great really just boils down to them, in my opinion, being naive and blind to what's really going on, because they have this perception that we're in this spiritual place, and like they'll tell me like, oh, we're protected by there's like a force field of energy that surrounds Yogaville and everything's all good here, so that like lets them put their blinders on to the stuff that's going on, and like they're just kind of blind to what's really going on, and they don't, almost like they can't handle it, so they don't want to face it, but they're gonna have to. I mean, they've had to. So at the end of the day, I can't really be mad at anybody, because I think they have the way they see things, and it's not like somebody can just change that with brute force. I think they just have to go through that whole thing with all the lawsuits or whatever and get to the other side, and that, and be like, hopefully they can learn from that. And, in the future, it will be less toxic, I believe.
That's a very optimistic view.
Mm-hmm. I try to be optimistic about it, because especially like those older people aren't going to be there forever. They're going to be passing away, and there's going to be new people, and there already are some newer people taking over the stuff, how things are run. If they play their cards right, they can revive it and make it something new and improved.
And this was the teacher that squeezed you really tight was the one that kicked you out of school? Or was that a different?
No, that was later. That was totally warranted because I was, kind of a little far back or whatever.
What were you doing in school?
I just had anger issues, and I think it was a lot of it was because I didn't have, like, the mother there to, like, which I never realized, like, I really never, it's like they say you don't miss what you never had or whatever. I never, like, even, I guess deep down it was because I was always angry or whatever, but I never really thought about it and was like, oh, that must be why. Well, until later, but really I was just kind of thought this was just how life was.
You know what, Shai? A lot of people go their whole lives and they never make that connection. That's something that happened in their childhood. Affects, their emotions or their experience. That's really...
That's what my mom said. Is like she thought when she became an adult, she could just put it all behind her and it would be fine. But nope.
Yeah.
Apparently not. So, but I will say, all things considered, I am glad I grew up there and all that, and I went through all that because I think the hatha and the meditation really helps me in so many ways that are like impossible to put into words. But at the same time, it's like I was saying about being able to explore the wilderness and stuff like that. I think that instilled like some confidence in me and like my ability to make it through quote unquote tough situations or whatever, because it'd be kind of sketchy out there sometimes climbing up rocks or whatever, and I'm like the only person, nobody's around or whatever. So stuff like that.
I feel like everybody that grew up at Yogaville is kind of a badass in that way.
Yeah. But yeah, and I got to meet cool people like at the cafe, like you and Eliseo was there a lot.
Yeah.
Parker. So yeah, a lot of cool people. Honestly, all in all, I'd say it was good despite the shortcomings.
When did you go to public school?
It must have been about 2010, I guess.
So that was what you said, second grade, or?
Yeah.
And what was that transition like going from the Vidalium to public school?
It sucked, but it was kind of funny though, because you know how in Yogaville you have the surrounding county, which is like basically just
Buckingham.
Yeah, like the country folk, which is chill. They're nice people. But when I first started going there, I couldn't understand what anybody was saying, because coming from Yogaville, people don't really talk with the country accent so much.
Oh wow!
So when I go to the public school and they're all talking with their country accent, I didn't know what anybody was saying. Like literally, I didn't know. And then they had us do the Pledge of Allegiance. They never told us about that.
They're like, "You commie."
Yeah, literally. No, but I just remember looking around and everybody standing up and they all got their hands on their hearts and they're just like reciting something, and I'm like, this seems like more of a cult than where I'm from.
Seriously.
They were like, stand up. I'm like, okay, I know, I'm sorry. And they was like, oh, it's on the wall. I'm like, okay, I gotta learn this now.
What did the other kids think about you?
Yeah, some of them were curious. Some of them were just kind of mean. Like on the bus, especially for some reason, there was a couple of them that were just kind of like, they're like, oh, a bunch of weird hippies or whatever. So they thought they would call me Yogi Boy and stuff like that or whatever. Yeah, but I think
what did other students think about Yogaville? Did you have an idea of, was there like a general impression from other students about what it was?
I think it was a general like feeling of like those people are weird, and people would ask me for some reason if we had nudists or something.
Oh, I think because Twin Oaks has nudists.
Oh, is that what it is?
There's another intentional community, and they are all polyamorous, and there's a lot of intentional communities in Central Virginia, and a couple of them are walking around naked a lot. So
I bet.
I just lumped you in with that. It's like the opposite at Yogaville. It's like you can't show your kneecaps or your ankles or anything.
I know, yeah, it's weird. It's like people think that it was like, no, they won't let you do anything.
Yeah.
You got to get a vow of intent, if you look at somebody wrong. But anyway, I always thought maybe it was like some drunk country boy was driving through Yogaville in the middle of the night and like seen a swami maybe they were like not able to see straight. They thought they were naked or something.
Oh.
I thought maybe that's what it was. They were just like some drunk driver, because they really be doing that around there, not gonna lie. But,
drinking and drive. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I remember in Buckingham, I would sometimes just go to the gas station to hang out if I like wanted to not be around Yogaville people, and like everybody's drinking and driving. I'm like, y'all gotta chill.
Yeah, I know.
When I interviewed Satya, she said she felt like she was always being watched at Yogaville. Did you ever have that feeling as a kid growing up, or no?
No. When I was a kid, I would almost be like, it was almost the opposite. People would just kind of ignore me unless I was like hanging out with them or something. But they were like not, they were like too busy to be bothered almost, so I would just go around and do whatever, climbing trees or whatever. Once in a while, somebody would be like, be careful. But that's not, that's pretty much about it. But I can imagine for somebody like that who's getting involved in being a part of that whole organization, it's different because you have to like measure up to their amorphous, like whatever standards. It almost feels like they, from what I was hearing from her, was they sort of move the goalpost whenever you get close and you're never good enough. And I honestly think partly that got a little bit into me, because I thought, like, I'm still working on this, honestly. It's like this whole purity thing, and like I have to purify myself, and I have to like abstain from certain things. At the same time, if you repress yourself, you're going to end up blowing up later. Yeah. So
how do you remember the Yogaville community viewing outsiders?
As a kid, I thought, there's Yogaville, and then there's this crazy world out there that people talk about that I don't really know much about. But I never realized that there's like a lot of people who are religious. I thought it was like we had this thing that we like knew what was up, and everybody else was not that, like I said, not that that was ever something somebody had told me. It was just the vibe I got as a kid. And it was funny because I remember one day I was at my grandma's house, and Barack Obama was on the TV, and he said, and it might have been after Katrina, and he was saying like,
Katrina would have been Bush. So,
oh, okay. It was something like that. Some sort of natural disaster happened, and he was saying that, we're going to pray to God or something. And I was like, wait, they know about this too?
Wow.
Because I had no idea. I was like, I thought this was just our thing. I thought everybody else was like heathens. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely the vibe. They would never say explicitly, we got the thing that nobody else has.
But
they give that vibe off.
Yeah.
But it's ironic because the whole thing that they preach is we value all religions.
Yeah.
But it's like you didn't understand.
Literally.
Like growing up, they didn't instill that in you. It was just like this vibe they had.
Well, like I said, they never actually fully explained it to us as kids. They would just kind of like, maybe they just assumed that we like got it or something. I don't know. They never really sat us down and was like, well, here's how this came about and here's what we believe. It was more just like, here, do yoga. So you're just kind of like left to surmise whatever you come up with.
Was there anything else you remember about the quote-unquote outside world that you experienced and you were like, well, I thought it was different from what I was told at Yogaville?
Honestly, when I started going to public school, I was like, man, these people really are crazy. Like the people outside of Yogaville, because at Yogaville, I will say people, at least on the outside, most of those people are very like relaxed and chill, unless you like get them mad or whatever. But when I started going to public school and I seen how like quote unquote regular people are, it was like, these people are like tightly wound, man. Like
you're also in Buckingham though, right?
I know, yeah,
Buckingham
exactly.
Public Schools.
Exactly, and like we were saying, they do be drinking or whatever. So it's like, it's not like we didn't have that at Yogaville, but it was like a different thing at school.
Yeah.
But it's cool. I actually kind of respect it. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I like the Buckingham people.
Because I think sometimes in Yogaville they're a little soft,
Oh yeah.
Like they don't really want to tell you. Like when the COVID was going on and they didn't ever give me a lanyard. You know about the lanyards? Was that
explain that.
When the vaccines first came out, they came up with this genius idea to have you, wear a bright orange lanyard with your name on it, like a name tag, like they would give to lights, but it was bright orange, and you had to wear it, and it would say you're vaccinated. But if you didn't, they wouldn't give you a lanyard, and then you couldn't go on the property, or at least you couldn't go in the buildings of the ashram. And they never gave me one. Eventually, they stopped doing that, of course, but they never gave me one, and they never told me why. And
What, you were vaccinated?
I was.
And they still didn't give you...
Nope.
What the hell?
I know. Well, I think it was because I was in the woods smoking weed with my buddies that were there. So I think that was part to do with it. But they didn't tell me that. Like, they could have just said, yeah, that's why. And I would have been like, okay. But they wouldn't tell me, you know. It was like they didn't want to have that sort of a confrontation with me. I don't know.
That's messed up. And how long was this? That was like over a year they were doing that, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Damn.
Eventually, they were like, oh, yeah, we'll give it to you, but you have to apologize for... I did donuts at the quad one time because I like had sort of a psychotic break, and I like drove to Colorado. But before that, in the middle of the night, I drove up to the ashram and I did donuts in the quad, and so they didn't like that very much. And then they used that as the reason to not give me the lanyard, even though before that they wouldn't give it to me.
It's funny.
It was very cathartic. I will
bet.
say. Yeah. And then I came back and the tire marks were in the grass. I'm like, yeah, that was me. And they were like, you have to apologize so we can give you the lanyard. But then it was like, they kept telling me, well, we'll come meet. You have to come meet at this time and apologize to Shiva. And it's like, okay, I'll do it. But you're giving me these times that I'm telling you I work at this time. And they're like, well, you can do this time. And it's like the same time, you know. So they were just, it was almost like Kafka-esque, you know what I mean? It was like they were just putting me through the, jumping through hoops to never get anywhere, you know. But eventually they just stopped doing it, so it never mattered anyway, you know. Not that I need to go over there for anything.
But like to get food, right?
No, I was at that time I was, you know, I had a real job and I was paying for all my food basically, so I had my own stuff to eat. So but yeah.
That's still messed up. They did that.
I know, yeah. It is what it is.
That's where you grew up. That's your home.
At least they let me go there now.
Yeah.
Because some people do not have that privilege.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's that like? People explain that to the people getting kicked out or
you can
privileges removed.
Yeah, you can get banned from the property if you like are caught doing certain things there, like smoking or whatever. Or fornicating on their premises, you know, stuff like that. I know of some people that have had that happen, or just being generally a nuisance. One time I got banned for 2 weeks because I yelled at somebody. My words were colorful. It was too colorful for that environment. So they were like, yeah, you can't come for 2 weeks. So I was like, damn. I think I was like 12 at that time, though.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But yeah, people have been like permanently banned, I think.
Mm-hmm. I remember one time I was working the front desk and one of the people got kicked out in front of me and he just started like, he was like, yep, I just got kicked out. And he started like cussing up a storm. And I think it was like the security guard and a couple other dudes like, were like, you got to get out of here. And then they all came up to me and were like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, he was just...
Yeah, it sounds
they'll
right.
kick people out.
They do. That's one thing I will say is they do attract a lot of unstable people who are, like, looking for some sort of rehab, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't always help them as much as it should, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about because I was one of the many people who come to Yogaville when they're not doing mentally well, but there's children growing in this community and like all these people who aren't necessarily doing their best or showing up. What's that like?
Growing up, I started to notice that there were some odd people that I should probably keep a distance from. But there was never any like big altercations or anything. Mm-hmm. Like I would hear about things this or that here and there, but I never really like saw anything crazy myself.
Were there any restrictions around like relationships growing up? Because some of the kids who were at the Yogaville school when they made them sign a paper that said they can't date or anything like that. Did they have that for you guys?
Well, there wasn't really anybody for me to date anyway, so it didn't really matter.
Like, you don't got to sign the paper.
No, I never seen a paper like that, no, so it didn't really matter.
How was your transition to adulthood been like and moving outside of Yogaville?
Honestly, I think it's been great.
You graduated like top of your class, right? And
I was up there, but it was really a low bar, like, to be honest. Like, it wasn't really that hard. But yeah, I did pretty good. But in terms of what I do now, I have gone the trade route, I guess you could say.
like carpentry, right?
Yeah, right now I build cabinets, like high-end stuff for the rich people around here. It's not that bad. I kind of like it. My coworkers are nice, and the money's pretty good for not having been to college. So, but that is one thing. Like, sometimes I'll go out to bars or whatever, and it's kind of weird because from where I'm from, totally different vibe from going to a bar. In Yogaville, it's like the opposite of that. So when I'm up in there, it's like, damn, these people are lost. It's almost like I feel bad for these people that hang out at bars all the time. It's like, each to their own, but it's like, but at the same time, it's like I want to get out there and like meet people, but it's like all anybody does is drink all the time.
Yeah, it's really hard.
I'll have a drink here and there, but it's like, damn, these people really, that's all they do.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the social environment revolves around drinking.
Yeah, and it's like the whole country.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was one thing I really liked about Yogaville is you can make relationships with people that don't involve drugs or alcohol.
Yeah, just have
and there's things to do. There's a culture around, like, we play board games, we go on hikes, like
game night at the cafe.
Yeah,
we had that.
Yeah,
that was really cool. Working at the cafe really expanded my social skills because I was not always growing up. I was very like socially challenged for sure. But that helped. I feel like in general I'm doing pretty well. Like I hear horror stories about people who, went to college and now they have all this debt and maybe they even dropped out and didn't even get anything out of it really except for the college experience or whatever,
Yeah.
So, honestly, I kind of feel like I dodged a bullet.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of life is just choosing which problems you want to deal with. Like, do you want the commune problems or do you want to have, like, normal job, 9 to 5
Yeah, or
problems.
You could go be a monk, but then you have to deal with all the other monks.
Monk problems, yeah. There's definitely monk politics.
Yeah, exactly.
We've seen a lot of that up close.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you want the people to know about Yogaville?
I would say, don't knock it till you try it. But be careful. That's about it. That's what I would say. I didn't even know about that whole like bulimia stuff they're into or whatever it is. With the salt water or whatever.
Yeah, they teach you that in TT.
I didn't know about any of that until I listened to that.
There's a whole underground world.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too when we were texting about just different things that have gone on in Yogaville's past. You grew up there, but a lot of this stuff you're hearing for the first time. Like, you didn't grow up hearing about Swami Satchidananda's relationships
Nope.
or about Bhagavan Antle, I guess. You didn't.
I didn't know anything about him until I watched Tiger King.
Yeah. What was that like, seeing that?
I never knew about any of that, and this guy had tigers 2 miles away from Yogaville. He had his own zoo. And I'm like, what? I kind of want to go see if I can find it, to be honest.
I feel like we've been to that house.
Oh, really?
Because I remember I rewatched Bhagavan Antle's season a couple days ago, and they were like, we had this house, and like they showed a picture of it. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've been to that house and hung out there.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah, there's stuff I didn't know about until I got older, and I'm like, this is interesting.
So what's that like learning about it now, later in life? Honestly,
the more I learn, the more I'm like, yeah, these people really are the same as everybody else, which is fine, I think that's good. I don't think there should be one special group that's better than everybody, I think that would be bad.
Yeah. Would you have any questions for people who grew up in the 80s and went to this school in Yogaville in the 80s and 90s?
Yeah, I always wondered what it was like to be a kid and like in that guy's presence, because I don't have any memory of him, so I've always wondered that, because it's almost like they're all like, oh, he's so enlightened and he's accomplished it, but it's like, okay, then let me see.
So there you have it, straight from the horse's mouth, what it's like growing up in Yogaville in the mid-2000s. This was a very eye-opening conversation for me because the more I speak with people about their experience growing up at Yogaville, I notice that a lot of people are in the same environment, experiencing the same things, but their reaction and how they grow from it, everybody responds differently. And it's very inspiring listening to all these stories. It's really a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and how even though we may go through tough situations, we have the power to take back control of our lives and write the rest of our story. One of the themes that came up in this episode for me was the power of banning people from the ashram, and I really want to drive home how much of a threat this is to people's livelihoods. A lot of times people will say in response to cult allegations, you can leave at any time you want, but cult scholars talk a lot about entrance costs and exit costs in their work. So at a place like Yogaville, the entry costs are very high. You have to follow the lifestyle principles if you're living on ashram property. You have to change your diet if you're not a vegetarian. You can't move in with your partner on ashram property unless you sign a vow of intent saying you're going to get married in a certain amount of time. There's a lot of things you have to give up or change about yourself to gain entry into the Yogaville community. And the exit costs can be even higher. So, for example, a lot of people come to Yogaville for a month-long program and then they don't leave. They love it so much, they have a great experience, and they want to stay. But unless you are coming to the ashram with a lot of money and are paying rent to live off of ashram property, you are most likely not going to be making any money. When I was there in 2016, I think I was getting $75 a month for being an ashram yogi and working full-time. And then if you're an employee at the ashram, you're most likely making minimum wage and you have to pay rent. So you're really not making a lot of money. Nobody comes there to get rich. They come there to live in a spiritual community of like-minded seekers. So after a while, if you learn more things about Yogaville that you don't really like, or you want to make a statement, if you want to challenge the current power structure, Yogaville has the ability to ban you from their property. And let me make this clear. Buckingham, Virginia, and Yogaville is in the middle of nowhere. The closest town where you can actually do anything is an hour away in Charlottesville. And so even if you want to leave, a lot of times, if you stayed there for a while, you've given up your ability most of the time to make a substantial amount of money to save and move somewhere else and put a deposit on a place to rent. So you're kind of stuck there. You have to follow these rules so you don't get kicked out. The social environment at Yogaville revolves around a lot of meal times, hiking, like we said, hanging out in the cafe. And I remember when I was working in the cafe, they had a list of people who were banned from the property. And they said, if you see any of these people in this room, call security. So for instance, like Chai mentioned about his mom being banned, that's so messed up. You can be banned from the community where your child is. So you can't spend time with your child in your community unless you live off ashram property. And even if you're only banned on parts of the property, like Chai said he was only banned from indoors, it makes life really inconvenient. You're cut off socially. It's difficult to get food. And a lot of times when word gets out that you've been banned, people in the community will shun you and not talk to you and look the other way when you're coming. So it is an extremely powerful tool that the ashram has to keep people in line. You can literally get banned for making out with somebody. And so if you kiss somebody on ashram property and they find out, they can kick you out. And if you defy the orders and you come on ashram property anyway, they call the police on you for coming onto private property uninvited. So it's really messed up. And the culture around banning a lot of the time is, I remember I would make friends with new people and get to know them and like them in the program. And then one day I would look around and be like, where is so-and-so? And then they'd be like, oh, they got banned. And there wasn't a conversation with the community like, oh, this person was harming this person in this way, so we had to ask them to leave. There was never any resolution or community understanding about it. It was a very scary feeling a lot of the time. Like, people are getting banned left and right, and I don't want to get banned, so I'm gonna make sure that I comply, is what myself and a lot of people do in this situation. So yeah, it's messed up. But for the next few episodes of this show, I will be interviewing other people who grew up at Yogaville. Everybody has a different perspective, everybody has a different feeling. Looking back on it, like Chai is very optimistic and enjoyed his overall experience. I know a lot of people who are not too happy about the childhood experience that they had living at Yogaville. And so we will be listening to their stories, which I think need to be amplified. So if you made it this far, thanks for listening. This has been Brianna Patton with Surviving Satchidananda.